Now, I myself am not a huge historian, which is part of the reason why I wanted to get you on here. Anytime I have the opportunity to learn about anything, especially something I'm interested in, like native culture, I don't know much about it. So I did do a smidgen of research before this, and it seems like I wasn't able to find much in terms of colonization before when Christopher Columbus kind of came around. Is there any record of other peoples coming over and either trying to colonize or trying to become allies with the natives?
Record, no, but the peopling of the Americas is kind of this holy grail in archaeology. What we know is that there were probably people in the Americas earlier than is commonly taught. And there were probably several waves of people coming into the Americas. And again, I'm not a real specialist on this, but from what I've read from people who are specialists, that's kind of where the archaeology and everything is going. There has been recent improvements in understanding through DNA kind of sequencing and that sort of stuff. But yeah, no. In terms of colonization, no, we don't know anything prior to at least in the Americas, to European colonization happening. There are obviously things like the Aztecs or something who would have at least taken over other indigenous peoples, but no one knew coming in from other parts of the world and then colonizing in the Americas. But like I said, we do think that there are at least a few waves of peoples coming into the Americas. Now, I do have to add though that for indigenous people, they and their people have always been here. That's the idea. They emerge from from the land itself. And I bring that up because, again, it is broadly the native way of understanding their origins. It doesn't really matter to them if there were people who came to the Americas from Asia, for example, because the kind of birth of their community, right, and their ancestors is something that's forged in America, right? So whether or not there are people coming in before that or not is pretty immaterial. And in the sense of the history that is told within indigenous communities about, our people came from this part of the land, this mound, or this cave or the ocean or whatever it happens to be. In terms of kind of a Western understanding of that, what it correlates to is the development of this indigenous community. So, whatever it happens to be, Narragansetts or Neantics or Pequots or Wampanoags or, Bokonokets, whatever. Those people are born, created, etc. in America, and that's because the community that they know, right, both historically as well as into the present, is in fact forged in America, and that's important for all kinds of reasons. But the main reason I bring it up now is to show that is to, again, to decolonize, as we say, our understanding of the history. And by decolonize, I mean to privilege indigenous ways of being seen, the world, their cultural values, etc., in the center of that history. And so that for again, the indigenous peoples I know, as well as the groups I've studied, that's how they understand their origins in America. And so I repeat that now. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Right. So it seems from some of the stuff that I've read, it seems like the real bad, like the real bloodshed. It seems like that started to go on around the 1800s. Like, is that accurate? Where the real like kind of war started to come through?
Not necessarily, right? Because I mean, well, so it depends where and when you're talking about, right? But
Right.
no, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it, or to kind of mark that. You could so for example, I mean, with the Spanish conquest of the Americas, there's bloodshed from the start. I mean, and in a lot of ways that there would have been more in certain areas had the European the Europeans arriving would have, if they had the power, there would have been more earlier, um, you could also look at it as, for example, in our neck of the woods, right here in southern New England. I mean, you have pandemics going through indigenous communities ahead of English settlement in the area. Wiping out like half the Wampanoags, for example, in certain areas. And in fact, it's for that reason that the pilgrims, right, are helped and welcomed by Massasoit in 1620, as he wanted new allies against that he could use to strengthen his community after population losses from epidemics. So you could look at the bloodshed that way. I mean, in terms of the United States, right? You could also make the argument that the creation of the United States is a tremendous problem, a horrific outcome for Native peoples, because again, it's built on this liberal premise, which then necessitates a ramping up of indigenous dispossession. So and this ongoing warfare that you see in the 18th through 19th centuries, and now on into the 20th century. The same could be true, for Canada, but a little bit different. But the general process of violence being used against indigenous peoples in the 18th and 19th century, that's in the kind of Anglophone world, that's true of all of North America. So yeah, I mean it's bad in a lot of ways, no matter how, when, and where you look at it. And again, a lot of that has to do with the ways in which these kind of visions of the world, right, that Europeans are bringing with them as they come to America.